Brock Bowers just had the greatest rookie tight end season that anyone has ever had. And yet some people are going to try and convince you that you should take Drake London, Derrick Henry over him. Frankly, one of the most absurd things, Mr. Buck St. Thomas, that I have ever heard in my entire life. What you were looking at on the screen right now are the greatest ever fantasy seasons, not just by rookies, but by any tight end under the age of 25. This is a very simple filter. Over 1,000 yards, over 5 touchdowns, under the age of 25. Obviously, you see Bowers, the youngest to ever do so. Probably the more important thing, though, is you see that most of the players on this list were not 22 years old. They were 23, they were 24, they were 25, because tight end is a hard position to play in the National Football League, Buck. And generally speaking, guys don't hit the ground running on that position. You know, there's a notable name missing from this list, Travis Kelce, because he never did that until he was 26.
It's
hard position to learn.
No fault of his own.
No fault of his own. Buck, I am a Brock Bowers bull. I am not kowtowing to big fantasy football in this one. Big fantasy football is trying to hide Brock Bowers. Why? Why are they trying to hide Brock Bowers?
Well, you know, the people who make projections are just assigning numbers to common sense. And, you know, when it reaches the best ball intelligentsia, you know, they get their feathers ruffled because...
Frankly, you actually can't really find a projection set that tells you to draft Brock Bowers. I will say that by and large, the projections, obviously, these are the Mike Clay projections. We can pull up the Fantasy Life ones a little bit later if we need to. The projections do assign him a more narrow band, because it's very hard to project a guy who scored 5 touchdowns last year, score 13 next year. But please continue.
All right. Yeah. So Bowers is an amazing talent. I got to get that out of the way. He was a complete smash at ADP last year. He went around pick 100, which is nuts on Underdog. I got 10%. I wish I had more, honestly, but 10% felt good. And at this point, I think we all know that Brock is an elite football player. Like, this is not a Brock talent take. It's about his ADP. He's going in the second round, often at the top. He's sliding a little bit now, but I just think this is a pretty bad price, you know, not due to his talent, like I said, but due to the situation around him that's changed dramatically. If you're taking him in the second, you think he's separating himself enough from the rest of the tight end value available to us on Underdog. And there's a lot of that, by the way, later in the draft. But Bowers spiked over 20 points 2 times last year. He's doubled in the red zone a lot. He's going to be again. I already know none of you will agree. Sack, please spare me from the top rope. Just hear me out. Last year, the Raiders were a franchise in complete disarray. They had absolutely zero run game to speak of whatsoever. They traded away Devontae Adams. They had Gardner Minshew and AOC as quarterbacks, and they spammed the crap out of Bowers. He had a 6.6 ADOT, if I'm not mistaken. He had an absurd 153 targets, 112 catches, nearly 1,200 yards, only 5 touchdowns, as you alluded to. He's an elite player, but his usage was the result of a dysfunctional offense, and he was used as an extension of the run game. Looking at these numbers and not considering the differences between what happened last year and what we think will happen this year is, in my opinion, a mistake, especially with such high draft capital involved. We make this mistake a lot with tight ends. We chased Prime Kelce with Mahomes, which was fine. Laporta was a third-round pick last year, actually, after a great 2023, and Pitts was a third-round pick after his rookie year where he got 1,000 yards. Now, I think Bowers is meaningfully better than both of those players. But in 2024, the Raiders had the 3rd highest rate of passing plays with 37.4 per game, the 4th most passing attempts per game in the league. They were 30th in rate of rush plays and number of rushing plays per game with 22 rushing plays per game. And they hired a head coach and an OC, both known for their effective run game. They drafted a generational running back in Genti at 106. They have Jacoby Myers, who, despite what you think, Davis is actually a very good wide receiver. He's a former quarterback.
He's fine.
Quarterback. And they drafted your favorite player of all time, Jack Bash, in the second round. The last regime.
By the way, still for the season, a negative to neutral pass rate over expectation for the 2024 Las Vegas Raiders through 16 weeks.
That's fair. But the last regime drafted Bowers, who's an elite player in a less favorable situation. Like, if I had to guess, the Raiders are probably going to add about 7 rush attempts per game and lose about 7 pass attempts per game. What do you think about that?
That is crazy. That will definitely not happen.
You don't think they're going to run more and pass less?
They might run a little bit more. They might be a little bit more competitive. I think it's pretty instructive to look at Chip Kelly's Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I want to caution old Davis Mattek from saying Chip Kelly's going to come in and run the fastest offense in the NFL, because I think Chip Kelly is more of a pragmatist than that. He did that because it was a clear structural advantage for his old Philadelphia Eagles teams. I still think they will play fast. The years that Chip Kelly coached in the NFL, his teams were 27th, 5th, 6th, and 29th in total pass attempts. In terms of rushing attempts, they were 4th, 7th, 11th, and 5th. Obviously, it's very hard to be top 5 in both passing and rushing attempts. That's how fast those offenses were playing. Just real quick on the 2016 49ers, you can completely disregard any result from that team. These were the best skill position players on those teams. Colin Kaepernick and Blaine Gabbert were the quarterbacks. Carlos Hyde, Sean Drawn, and DeJuan Harris were the running backs. The wide receiver 1 was Jeremy Curley. He would never have more than 29 receptions again in a season. Quentin Patton, Garrett Selleck, they were out of the NFL. Torrey Smith, out of the NFL. This was the worst team in the NFL, and it was not particularly close. I don't think that we can really blame anything there. Let me tell you the biggest difference between the 2024 Raiders and the 2025 Raiders and why you are wrong. And it's that Geno Smith, while not a great NFL quarterback, not as good as the ball knowers, the film watchers, I bet Chris Harris and his ilk loved Geno Smith for a 3rd round pick to the Las Vegas Raiders. But Geno, much, much better than Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, and Desmond Ridder. He was 17th in the NFL in EPA per play last season. He was 15th in EPA plus CPOE composite, better than Matt Stafford, better than Bo Nix, better than Drake May, better than Trevor Lawrence. And I don't even think Gardner Minshew qualifies for this because I have the play filter for too many, so I can decrease it. Gardner Minshew basically was the worst quarterback in the NFL last year who got like meaningful reps. Maybe not the worst because we got some very poor quarterback play last year, but he was amongst the worst. One thing we can be absolutely certain of is that Brock Bowers is one of the best players in the entirety of the NFL, yards after the catch. 599 yards after catch last year, more than Brian Thomas, more than CeeDee Lamb, more than George Kittle, more than Justin Jefferson, more than Malik Neighbors. That is an elite skill. If we are saying that Chip Kelly is a football pragmatist, which I actually think both of us would agree on, I think he will see that skill set. He will continue to use Bowers as an extension of the run game a little bit. But I would argue that Bowers actually is better used, kind of like, if you can go with me here, imagine Geno Smith's 2024 with the short game usage, but also some of the Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews up the seam, 16 yards. He's in front of he is behind the linebackers, but in front of the safety. That is actually what I think is most tethered to his absolute upside. And I would say,
believe you just invoked Kyle Pitts there, but go ahead.
Well, remember, Kyle Pitts used to be good.
He was never good. He was the only option. That's actually really similar to what happened with Bowers last year. Bowers is like Kyle Pitts if he was good.
You can't on one hand tell me that Jacoby Myers is better than I think and say that he is the only option now. And I would actually say the drafting of Dante Thornton is relatively bullish in terms of adding in another clear out guy. Your bull case really couldn't be any more simple, though. It would be seeing the aging curve that Mr. Gronkowski was on. He got a little bit better. Bowers, 1,100 yards and 5 touchdowns, the only tight end to do that as a 22-year-old since Rob Gronkowski. Now, is Brock Bowers, am I guaranteeing you that he scores you 17 touchdowns? Absolutely not. Could Brock Bowers score 17 touchdowns? Would anyone be stunned?
Yes.
I would not. I would not at all.
Brock had Brady, man. What are you talking about? This guy has Geno Smith. You got to let me talk about Geno. I can't. This is ridiculous. Please. AOC and Minshew combined for 17 touchdowns and 14 interceptions last year. Geno Smith, the most accurate quarterback, had 21 touchdowns and 15 interceptions. Geno is not a good quarterback. He's always been bad. He's had over 30 touchdowns one time. He's going to be 35 in October, and he's only thrown for 30 touchdowns one time. The next closest being 21 last year. This particular echo chamber has forgotten that he's bad just because he's always such a good ADP value. And he is again this year. I'm going to draft a lot of Geno this year, but Geno's bad. Vegas has set his season-long passing stat lines at 20.5 touchdowns, 3,500 yards. I mean, the yardage is fine, but like they're not gonna throw a lot of touchdowns. They have Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly. They drafted Genty. This is their focus. Bowers is going to be awesome. He's not going to be worth a second round pick. I mean, Vegas doesn't even think Las Vegas Raiders are in Vegas. They know what's up. Vegas does not think that they're going to be good at all this year. Only the Jets, Giants, and Titans have a lower Vegas win total. They're literally in Vegas. Books have Bowers line at 4.5 or 5.5 touchdowns, depending where you look. His receiving line is 900 to 950.
But I don't care. I don't really care that much about a median projection for someone who is going to get that much volume.
Why do you think he's going to get so much volume? Like he got all that volume last year because they sucked and they had no run game. They were
what is the? I mean, even the median projections think that he is going to get an absurd amount of volume, almost 10 targets per game.
But they're not projecting him for close to what he had last year, right? I mean,
no, they're projecting him super close, 147 targets.
Mike Clay is, but they're projecting him for 300 less yards than he had last year.
Because you always regress yards after the catch to the norm a little bit. I would say the situation for Bowers is very easily explained. Brock Bowers was 17 years old this season. Georgia, they win the national championship. They only lose one game. He outproduced Ladd McConkey, a great NFL player, outproduced A.D. Mitchell, pretty good at getting open, maybe not a great NFL player, outproduced James Cook, obviously, in the receiving game, and scored more touchdowns than James Cook, outproduced Jermaine Burton, third-round NFL draft pick, outproduced Kenny McIntosh, third running back for the Seattle Seahawks, Zamir White, George Pickens.
Zamir White outrushed James Cook. Like this, you got to take this stuff with a grain of salt. I understand it's fun to talk about, but like it's not the NFL. You're not looking at the NFL.
What I'm telling you is that Brock Bowers has been the best player on his team every year that he has ever played organized football. He was the best player on the 2024 Raiders. He's going to be the best player on the 2025 Raiders. And for fantasy football, yes, positionally, he is a better tight end than Genty is a running back. I think it is likely that Brock Bowers will leave the National Football League as a Rob Gronkowski-esque legend. And if he stays healthy, he will probably beat all of Gronk's record. He will never beat Gronk's record for
yardage.
He'll never beat Gronk's touchdown per game record because Gronk is, better than Randy Moss, better than all
Gronk
those guys.
Had Brady and Kelsey had Mahomes, and Brock has Geno Smith, who's terrible. Like they're gonna
Geno
run.
Smith.
They
Geno
wanted to
Smith
hand it
is
off.
definitely not terrible. Geno Smith is like basically fine.
Dude, Geno Smith is terrible. I don't know why you think he's good. It doesn't make any sense. You got to watch the guy. Watch the guy.
Because his stats have always been fine.
Have they? How many touchdowns has he scored? Like, I mean, look at his touchdowns. You're looking at efficiency metrics and accuracy. Like, you have to look at what actually came out of the games.
I mean, he has a 32 touchdown season when actually passing was down in the 2022
one
NFL
season over 30 touchdowns, and he's
right.
35.
But what happened that season? He got good skill position players. He was around better players. The 2022 Seahawks were a good team. They had a good rookie rusher. They had a really good outside wide receiver in DK Metcalf. And I think the parallel you would draw was Bowers would be the Lockett here. Right.
Okay, well, how did they do? I mean, neither of them were top 12 wide receivers that year.
I think they both were.
No, they were like 13, 15. We've looked this up. I know I've looked this up.
Well, obviously, Brock Bowers is a lot better than Tyler Lockett, right? That is the difference.
I will allow you to retract that.
You think that Tyler Lockett is better than Brock Bowers?
What you said earlier. You said Bowers is the Lockett.
Bowers is the Lockett role in the sense of he is only targeted close to the line of scrimmage.
Bowers is nasty. If Bowers was with Mahomes, you should take him like third overall. Like, I get that. He's just not like where we should really take this, Davis, is look at the rest of the tight end value on the board. Look at both median projection from books and what you think is going to happen.
I'll just say this. I care zero about median projections.
Okay. Well, use your brain then and just look at the tight ends going down the list. Think about what you would project them for, what you think they're going to do. And if you can just get 3 of them from like round 8 to round 16, just like quarterback, and then maybe take, a stud running back or a stud wide receiver at the top of the second, like this, unless Bowers has to go nuclear. He's like being priced at his ceiling with Geno in this offense. That's my opinion. He's priced at his
I don't
ceiling.
think he is. I don't think he is being.
I would start to take him
his
at the
ceiling.
top of the third. I would start to take Bowers at the top of the third, and I hope that he goes there.
He was third in the entire National Football League in receptions as a rookie. I think that there is generally speaking, NFL players get better. Look at what Jamar Chase did as a rookie. Look at what Justin Jefferson did as a rookie. Look at what CeeDee Lamb did as a rookie.
He can still improve as a player and not statistically reach the level of spamination that was happening over there. Geno was just tossing out spam. He was going to the grocery store, whipping it out to Brock.
I think that's a really bad argument to suggest that NFL coaches are going to do the thing that worked less. That just generally speaking is not what happened.
It didn't work. They sucked. Him gaining yardage and them losing the game is not it working.
But those plays generated positive EPA per play.
Sure.
So that leads to, that just by definition, that leads to
That's
winning.
why they went out and got 2 new coaches and drafted Genty in the 4th overall.
They went. Well, I think they got new coaches because the old coaches stunk. And
hey guys, come on in. As long as the EPA per play matches what it was last year for Bowers, we're good.
What football coach comes into a situation and says, this guy's our best player, we are going to give the ball to Trey Tucker more often? It's just really unlikely.
Like, do they draft Genty and then say we're going to give it to Brock Bowers every time, Ashton?
Well, I think actually a pretty good comp for this is Trey McBride, who got spammed. The training, the coaching staff changed, and then he got spammed more. The coaching staff changed in between this year, and it led to being spammed more often, even with the addition of Marvin Harrison Jr.
They didn't draft. They had an old running back, James Conner, who was good, but they didn't draft like an elite generation.
There are just only so many rushing attempts that you're going to get per season, though. Like, I would guarantee whatever Ashton Genty. So the team is projected for 354 rushing attempts. I'm going to guess that's actually probably less than the amount of rushing attempts that the Raiders had last season with their running backs combined.
Okay,
it is.
So let me posit this to you then. Let me posit this to you. Do you take both of them? Like, do you think they're both going to work out, Genty and Bowers, at ADP? Do you think they're both going to pay off?
Yeah, I think it's really likely that they.
You think it's really likely that they're both going to pay off at the 1st round pick and a 2nd round pick, top of the 2nd?
Yeah, I would say.
I think
I would say it's more likely than not. I don't take a ton of them together on the same team, not because of season long upside, but just because of week 17 stuff. I think it's unlikely that they both generate 35 points in one game, and so it's not super optimal for week 17 for championship week stuff. But I think it's exceedingly likely that both of them probably outdo their median projections, because I think both of them are really good. I think Geno Smith is a little bit better than the market thinks. I think Chip Kelly is a really good offensive coordinator. Even on his bad teams, he was a good offensive coordinator. And I don't think that Jack Bash, Trey Tucker, Dante Thornton, Tommy Mellott, Michael Mayer, Ian Thomas, Raheem Mostert, Sincere McCormick, Dylan Laube, my boy Dylan Laube, I don't think any of these guys, it would not surprise me if this is the most concentrated 2-man offense in the entire National Football League. If these two guys generate over 50% of the total plays on the Las Vegas Raiders.
Okay, well, do you think Geno is going to score? You think he's going to throw for over 20, say 22, 23 touchdowns?
I would, if I was guaranteed 17 games, I would take the over on 22. Yeah.
Even though he's only done that once in his career.
He's only started 3 seasons. And last year was.
What does that tell you?
Tells you the NFL was wrong. He got drafted by a huge clown shoes organization, got in a fight with one of his defensive linemen in his locker room, and then had to play behind Eli Manning, a franchise legend. And then when he started, he was good. I
mean, you just watch Geno Smith year after year throw picks and make terrible decisions. At least I do. And I'm not falling for it. If you gave me Bowers in the 3rd, I'd take him. I'd take a lot of them. Not in the 2nd.
I am not playing scared. And if I'm thinking about who can be the story of the season, I think the 2nd best 22-year-old tight end season of all time, improving year 2. And I don't care about this positional, it's better to you have to start 3 wide receivers. You only start 1 tight end. I don't care about any of that stuff.
It's not even about that.
I believe that Bowers can score the most points of any pass catcher. I believe that
yes. Will? Yeah. No.
I'd be tempted. Like, I think he can straight up outscore Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. I think it's definitely possible.
Bro, I don't know what's happening. You're turning back into Davis again from last year. I see it. I can see it in your eyes. The fire. 2024 Davis is shooting.
The goal of the game is to draft the best possible players. I know who the best possible player is at the tight end position, so that is who I'm going to draft.